projects. Mr. Bustamante holds a master's degree in political sciences from the Freie Universität Berlin and a postgraduate degree in international cooperation for development from the Latin American International Cooperation School. Then we will have Ms. Alexandra Markesteiner, who is an associate political affairs officer with a conventional arms branch of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs in New York. Her work focuses on transparency in military matters, military spending, and arms export control. Prior to joining the organization, she was a researcher in the Military Expenditure and Arms Production Program at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Her commentary has been featured in the New York Times, Foreign Affairs, Al Jazeera, Deutsche Welle, and the South China Morning Post, among others. Ms. Markesteiner holds a master's degree in Strategic Studies and International Economics from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. Then we will be honored to be joined by Mr. Roberto Hernandez Juarez, who is the General Director of Youth Building the Future Global and a Mexican activist with relevant participation in national and international forums of sustainability, ESG, climate change, human rights, and sustainable development, focused on companies and governments. In addition, he's a senior researcher in sustainability and law at the Virtual Laboratory of Law and Sustainable Development, and has been a speaker at COP26 and COP27. Mr. Hernandez holds a law degree from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Then we will be joined by Ms. Gabrielle Peterson, who is a member of the official youth constituency of the UN FCC negotiations, UNGO, where she recently led the activation process of a new climate, peace, and security working group. On the other hand, she is the senior manager of global communications and public affairs at the International Cooperation Association, where she aided the launch of 3 new global energy partnerships and provides communication support for United for Efficiency. Ms. Peterson holds a Master in Science in International and European Politics with distinction from the University of Edinburgh. She also completed 3 years towards a PhD in International Relations at the University of Cambridge, where she served as the editor-in-chief of the Cambridge Review of International Affairs. Then we will be joined by the creators of this guide, and we will present them after hearing some speeches from our guests. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Julian Bustamante, you may have the word, and I appreciate if you could give them an applause to all our guests. Thank you a lot.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacob, for this introduction. Good morning, everyone. I am very pleased to be part of this event today. As Jacob already said, I am the coordinator of the Arms Control Program at the UN Regional Center for Peace, Disarmament, and Development in Latin America and the Caribbean, also known as UN LYRIC. And UN LYRIC is also the regional branch of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. When I look back in time, I see myself 20 years ago as a curious political science student attending different events where international affairs topics were discussed and presented in university settings. I remember I felt grateful and privileged to be able to listen to high-rank representatives from government and international organizations. However, I did not see myself as an active stakeholder in these debates of political processes, but rather as an observer, a passive listener. Back then, I don't remember being aware of a clear space where young people could engage more actively in different topics of the multilateral agenda, particularly in international security-related issues. A lot has changed in 20 years, and so has changed the way the world approaches to youth. I am proud to say now that at the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, we remain committed to creating space for youth and working with youth on the different topics of our mandate. As the UN, we encourage governments to create this space for youth so that their voices are heard and demands are met. I am therefore very happy to see the wide presence of young people at this event today. Recognizing the important role of young people as key agents of change, The Office for Disarmament Affairs launched a youth outreach initiative, Youth for Disarmament, in 2019. Through an array of activities, the initiative strives to engage, educate, and empower young people with the aim of facilitating their meaningful participation in the field of disarmament and non-proliferation. One such example is the Leaders for Tomorrow workshop series, which was launched by the office in 2022. 25 young leaders were selected from over 400 applications based on their strong leadership working within youth organizations in the field of international peace and security. With financial support from the Republic of Korea, the group explored the linkages between disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control with 5 topics related to international peace and security. Following the completion of the program, the Leaders for Tomorrow presented their projects to engage youth during a UN General Assembly First Committee side event under the theme of disarmament education as a solution to peace. Santiago's guide, which we will get to know later today, provides an exemplary model of the ideas cultivated as a result of the initiative, and I'm very excited to join you all here today to celebrate its launch. I want to highlight the key role that young people have in the design, implementation, and monitoring of initiatives that impact their lives. I doubt there was ever a generation that was more ready and able to demand and advocate for their needs and convictions. I applaud Santiago's initiative and encourage him and other young people to forge a community that will thrive with an ever-increasing youth participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I certainly agree that spaces for the youth are limited, and therefore creating them and amplifying them is essential. Please, Ms. Alexandra, you have the floor.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and thanks again for having me. As you probably took away from Yaiko's introduction, my background is more in security policy and arms control rather than youth engagement or sustainability. So I'm not going to attempt to say anything smart about the guide's youth or sustainability angle. I will leave that to the other brilliant speakers that we have with us here today. But if you'll allow, I can perhaps offer some background information on the military aspect of the guide. I think that the problem that this guide tries to address is definitely a most pertinent one. Militaries are massive emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. Yet even so, the role that they play in accelerating and driving climate change is mostly overlooked. Part of that has to do with the fact that data is not very forthcoming, and consistent data is definitely difficult to come by. But by some estimates, the military sector is among the world's top polluters. But when we talk about military and climate change, most of the time the focus is on how militaries should adapt to the threat of a changing climate, and how the ramifications of climate change will shape the current and future security landscape. So, the keywords here being climate refugees, resource wars, how rising sea levels affect naval bases, et cetera, et cetera. And don't get me wrong, even that in and of itself is a sign of progress. I remember the days when when colleagues and I would be snuffed at by generals just for even bringing up the topic of climate change in these circles. So at least now, military leaders are acknowledging the threat that climate change poses. That's already something. But what is rarely talked about is how militaries themselves contribute to and drive climate change. As I'm sure you can imagine, all of these different systems, combat aircraft, warships, tanks, all of them consume massive amounts of fuel. And then there is, the electricity demand for cyber operations and the electricity that is needed just to just to keep the lights on in the barracks. It's a lot when you add it all up. But the good news is that even on this front, things are beginning to change. This launch event being a sign of that, most definitely. Over the past couple of years, you've had more and more activists, but also military planners thematizing the topic of how militaries contribute to climate change. The solutions, however, that are being proposed are slightly different. For one, there is the disarmament approach, which aligns with what Santiago is putting forward. That has to do with limiting the size of the armed forces, capping procurement programs, downsizing military activities, which then in turn allows governments not only to save money, but also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So in a way, a win-win situation, right? And then governments can free up money that can be spent on healthcare or education or climate finance, and then also at the same time help slow the progression of climate change. Then there is the approach that many military planners in defense ministries are taking, and that is how can the armed forces become greener? So in this case, you can think about military switching to renewable fuels and energy sources, incorporating hybrid motors into their vehicles, trying to make motors more efficient so that the fuel consumption decreases, stuff like that. Interestingly enough, the US Army actually just laid out a plan that would slash greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030. The thing with that, though, is it won't be cheap, right? The upfront costs will be quite substantial. The German armed forces have a similar program, and they say that they will have to invest $20 billion in order to comply with their climate goals. So what these plans entail is not really disarmament, but instead more money being poured into the military sector on top of what is already of what is already going to military activities. So in these circles, the thought of even compromising military capabilities or downsizing military capabilities in order to cut emissions is deemed unacceptable. So you have these two competing approaches that seem to be somewhat mutually exclusive. But I think sort of as time goes on, and also as we begin to feel the ramifications of climate change more and more, one of these approaches will come out on top, and which of those it will be depends, at least in part, to how convincing and how vocal young people can be in their pursuit of disarmament. So that's why I think that Santiago's guide is such an important resource for us all. I'll leave it at that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you again, Santiago, for this initiative. I think it's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this issue to the table, since certainly the military sector footprint is veiled, and we should be talking about its impact. Now, Ms. Gabrielle Peterson, please, you have the word.
There we go. Thank you again for having me here and inviting me to speak. So while I'm not a disarmament expert like my distinguished peers here, I do think that youth-led initiatives like this one are very important and are often underserved in the broader advocacy communities, although there has been great change, as has already been noted in recent years. But the climate security field is only growing, and it's something that will only become more relevant in the future. And the reality is that the issues of climate and security are inherently connected, and that a view on sustainable practices in military operations can often, as has also been noted, take a back seat. But I think part of that story is making sure that the entire operational ecosystem is considered, from not only the logistics, but also the supply chains and the waste management. And with the Clean Growth Leadership Network and through my work with a trade association for a global commodity, I'm constantly looking at supply chain security and sustainability. And I think this is often an unfactored point of discussion when looking at the sustainability of military operations beyond just the Scope 1 emissions. Not to mention that operations and technologies also use a number of strategic and critical raw materials, which should also be recovered, remanufactured, or recycled whenever possible. And while sometimes the security conflict may dictate the parameters of a situation, I think there needs to be a push to put systems in place to increase the sustainability of operations, at least during peacetime maintenance, and the right signals in place also to the private sector and industry when sourcing supply contracts for the majority of militaries. And going beyond operations, climate issues themselves can be a direct driver of security concerns. And I'm also part of the Institute of Economics and Peace Ambassador Program, which produces a number of reports every year on the state of violence and terrorism and positive peace around the world in an effort to quantify the cost of violence. And their Global Peace Index report covers about 99.7% of the world's population. And they found that global peace has deteriorated over the course of the past 14 years, and that the course of violence or the cost of violence to global economy was approximately $16.5 trillion as of 2021. And that's equivalent to 10% of the world's economic activity, which if you divided that equally would have the cost of each individual person to about $2,000 a year in 2021. So they also produce an ecological threat report, which clearly shows that there is a direct correlation between the levels of ecological threat and violence, and the world's 40 least peaceful countries are the most ecologically at risk. And this will also account for almost half of the world's population by 2050, and with 70% of the world's population expected to live in cities at that time. So when we talk about this broader ecosystem of violence and conflict, ensuring that ecological threat is addressed through sustainability initiatives in all regions is not just an environmental concern, it is a security one. And preventing climate-related destabilizing events will help to lower risks and threats that lead to instability, violence, and conflict. However, there's a difference, right? Between just living in an environment with the absence of violence. Positive peace is a concept that promotes this idea of building systems that are supported by interlinking factors that collectively help to prevent violence and conflict. And IEP identified 8 pillars of positive peace building, which involve factors like well-functioning government, sound business environments, distribution of resources, acceptance of the rights of others, good relationships with neighbors, the free flow of information, high levels of human capital, and low levels of corruption. And so with all of that in mind, I just want to recognize that this guide as a youth-led initiative that supports capacity building in other youth populations with the aim of strengthening pillars of positive peace, such as increasing human capital and information sharing, while addressing carbon emissions and ecological threats, which are drivers of conflict. And I believe that mainstreaming the voices of youth is essential to ensuring that those who will inherit the future have a seat at the table in climate-related policies. And as was mentioned in the introduction, I'm also a member of YOUNGO, which is the UNFCCC's official youth constituency. And it allows for collective youth advocacy to have a voice in climate negotiations. And so since this is a session for youth by youth, if any of you are interested, we also just launched this week a climate, peace, and security working group in YOUNGO to promote capacity building, networking, partnership, and advocacy in the UNFCCC frameworks on topics related to these issues. And so if any of you are interested, please feel free to reach out, but I'll get you connected with the group. But I'm hoping that we can bring youth from around the world together to create more projects and capacity building guides like this one, and to take advocacy on these issues directly to the decision makers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Santiago to tell us more about the guide.
Thank you very much for providing us with a broader view concerning sustainability as a transversal issue that involves assessing the cost of violence in our society. Now we'll welcome Mr. Roberto Hernandez Juarez. You may have the word.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Good morning, everyone from Mexico City. It's an honor and through a pleasure to hear you all the comments and all the feedback about this amazing work that Santiago, as a young leader of problem, has led on this global effort. And I think in this short intervention, there's not a lot that I can highlight besides the sustainability view and conflict. And there's something that we from Youth Building the Future Global has identified specifically on climate change, and also the system of United Nations, also from UNFCCC and YONGO. Sanctions are not working anymore. The sanctions couldn't stop the war, which is continually happening right now with Russia and Ukraine, along other conflicts around the world. So sanctions, or economic sanctions specifically, not just by one group, but by multiple groups and different groups, has not worked yet. And the Paris Agreement does also contemplate economic sanctions. So as a young generation, as people working with all this framework of United Nations, we ask ourselves then, how are we going to achieve the climate and the environmental, the sustainability goals that we all set if the sanctions are not working anymore? Then the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how are we going to create this new world of peace, and how are we creating already those new relationships? As UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez says, we need a global reset. We need a global climate and cultural and social reset that is focused on sustainability. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing that it comes from another world. It's based on sustainability, and it's based on science, and we need to say it, and we need to say it loud. And I think this document shows that perfectly, how science empowers youth, how this beautiful message that we share for years about youth in science or women in science, and we see the results finally, we see the data. And if that's not shocking, if that's not a call to action for everyone, then I don't know what it is. So I really congratulate Santiago, and I really congratulate everyone that is here and has pushed this global effort, because I don't think it's the final product. I think we need to keep pushing, and we need to keep working on all these topics, specifically on climate, specifically this year on the 75th anniversary of the Human Declaration, the Declaration of Human Rights, and the call that again Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez make about a halfway there campaign. We are halfway there to achieve the vision that we globally commit, which is the SDGs. So this is the perfect time, this is the perfect moment, and the perfect people all reunited here. So I do believe in this effort. I do believe that there's a reason for this document, and it's beyond the carbon footprint of an industry. It's a call for action globally. So thank you so much. I really congratulate everyone. I personally congratulate Santiago for leading this effort, and I hope this action multiplies along other conflicts around the world, not only I don't want to mention an industry, because I think we all know which industry I'm referring to, but all those industries, and go beyond that to start in this big and a small sector at the same time, forgetted by youth, but also that impact all youth globally. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And thank you for providing us with a vision of peace that engages with comprehensively working on making our world safer. Now we'll move on to welcome our creators of the guide. And to do so, I am really honored to be presenting Ms. Juliana Pino Mueller, who is a Brazilian young artist, educator, and change maker. And most importantly, she developed the artistic contents of the guide. In specific, she founded Historiarte, a platform in which she produces animated content to provide supplementary materials for non-traditional students. Ms. Mueller has always been passionate about fostering communities free of violence through education. And by the age of 17, she got a scholarship to learn about peacemaking with Israelis and Palestinians at the Eastern Mediterranean International School. Since then, she has been working on disarmament and education projects while studying sociology at Rice University. Juliana is a leader for tomorrow of the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs and a young change maker by Ashoka. Then, and last but not least, Mr. Santiago Yaraguan Dodero is a Mexican 22-year-old leader and activist addressing the relationship between climate change and disarmament, leader for tomorrow and leader for the future of the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, young peace builder of the United Nations Alliance for Civilizations, and most importantly, the author of the current guide. Prior to his disarmament concentrated work, Santiago led the creation and development of global events related to the 2030 Agenda at the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN-UD, as a project officer. Currently, he's an intern at the Permanent Delegation of Mexico to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the head of student member outreach at the International Law Association Chapter Mexico. Mr. Yaraguan studies law at Tecnológico de Monterrey and has been enrolled in several specialization courses in public international law. Thank you very much, and we're eager to hear you about all this content. Sorry. Please, Ms. Juliana, do you have the floor?
Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to say it's a huge honor to be here in the launch of Santiago's incredible guide by the side of our amazing speakers. I'm also super happy to see here a few of my Leaders for Tomorrow fellows, Philip, June, Sophia, and the friendly face of Julia and Mary Kay. This is really amazing. And I wanted to give some background of how I met Santi. So I met Santiago thanks to the Leaders for Tomorrow program, and I was delighted when he invited me to contribute to the guide. I'd love to share with you a few of my illustrations and some of the meanings behind them. So I'll be sharing my screen in just a second. Oops. Let me know if it's working. Not here. All right. Can you all see it well? Yes? Okay. So in this first opening piece, I was approaching a little bit about the global warming and the rise in the ocean levels. Once we pass the tipping point of the Earth, there'll be no way back. These billions of dollars spent in weapons and wars will be worth nothing because we'll all be equally suffering from the environmental impacts. Therefore, I decided to draw tanks, missiles, and jets all drowning in the ocean, facing the massive power of nature rebelling. On the background, planet Earth is red and orange, representing the unlivable temperatures. So the composition was inspired by this beautiful artwork on the right side, The Great Wave of Kanagawa by Katsushika Hokusai, made in 1831. So this painting depicts a giant wave about to strike the boats like a monster, showing the irresistible forces of nature and the irrelevance of human beings. So I believe in the context of today, it has everything to do with climate change. We're pushing ourselves through our own destruction, and at this time, the fault is ours. So I thought this would be a powerful message for the opening page of Santi's guide. On the next page, we have this piece right here. And on this one, I decided to depict how the armed conflict is not only responsible for the loss of millions of lives all over the world, but it's also ruining the life on Earth for anyone in the future. The tank shot is not only causing immediate human and environmental destruction, but contributing to the carbon footprint. So Santiago includes in the guide statistics about how the contribution of the military is up to 5 to 6% of the global greenhouse effects, surpassing, for example, civilian aviation and the shipping sector emissions combined, which was extremely shocking for me and a clear call for change. Therefore, I wanted to symbolize the carbon emissions through the military spendings on this one. On the next piece, I wanted to show our very own money and how it's being used for destruction. We as taxpayers are having our money used to fund the military, which in itself has a massive carbon footprint. The idea behind these illustrations is that commonly our money bills have very admirable figures of our nation, right? So this one is a critique about how countries often invest more in the military than on its own people, walking farther away from long-lasting peace and security. So our idols are something else. Our idols are actually destruction and death, symbolized on this one by the missiles, the jets, and the tanks. On the last one, I wanted to show on a lighter note what we can do to change this horrible scenario that we have seen so far. So clearly it's about youth protagonism and disarmament, which is one of the most important elements of it. Joining the Leaders for Tomorrow program truly showed me how much young people have the power to advocate for disarmament. These illustrations aim to show this power in action through protest. Initially, I wanted to draw national flags, but I realized that climate change goes way beyond borders and states. It will affect all of us. And if we don't do anything to change it right now, there will be no life, there will be no future. It requires us to unite beyond titles and labels. Therefore, I aim to represent these diverse groups coming together to advocate. So I hope this shows a little bit of a different perspective on what you're going to see on the guide. And I really truly wanted to thank Santiago for the chance to present a little bit of my perspective and my heart in it. Now the floor is his.
Thank you very much, Juliana, first of all, for sharing your art with us. I think we all agree that they are powerful messages that bring us closer to understanding this issue. And now I'll give the floor to our host. Please, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jay. And first of all, thank you all for your speeches. I'm so happy to hear your inputs and perspectives over this project, with, of course, your unique inputs over your personal perspectives and other ideas. So maybe at this point of this event, you are wondering, well, like, okay, so you have told us about the guide and stuff, but where is it? Because for the majority of people here, you haven't seen the guide. It has been a mystery, but I'm happy to tell you that now, I just gave some remarks before, but now you will have access to the guide, and of course with all of it has for you to experience what other speakers have told, and also Juliana has explained beautifully about the art that it's included in the guide, and that you will see that relates to specific contents of it. So perhaps just to tell you like what I will do around my speech. First of all, I will explain like the reasoning behind the guide in a general perspective, like how it is made, like which principles does it follows, and then you and I will discover the guide page by page, explaining what is inside, and of course, what can you expect from the contents. However, before proceeding, I would like to say thanks. Thank you for being here, viewer, but I also want to thank all of the people that made this guide a reality, because this guide is not only my idea, it has been part of the collaboration that I've been developing with several partners, and I think it's only fair to say thanks. In specific, I would like to thank the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs for all of their support regarding this guide. I would like to also say thanks to the UN Regional Center for Peace, Disarmament and Development in Latin America and Caribbean, Julian. Thanks so much for everything. Then I would like to also say thanks to the UN Alliance of Civilizations, to the UN Youth Office, to the UNFCC's Yungo, which Gabriel, thank you for being here. Also to my university, the Tecnológico de Monterrey, which helped me a lot in everything, either with the design and of course the Zoom details. I'm so grateful, and of course my education and unique perspectives that come from my uni. Also, I want to thank Youth Building the Future Global. Roberto, thanks for being here. I really value all of our collaboration. And of course, my family and friends who have been always with me and have supported me a lot. So, okay, I will stop saying thanks. I would like to share you a link in the chat, so please be aware. It will take you to a beautiful website that I have developed for this guide only. So, as you can see, you can see a link. I would like to ask you to please click on it. Okay. You will have a landing page And then you can click on download, and it will take you to another page. And in that page, you can click on the download icon, and there you will see the guide. You will see the guide in its full iconism with all of the things that Juliana has told you and other speakers. So yeah. However, now I will explain a bit how is it like how did we got into this effort. So maybe I will tell you about myself and perhaps my own history. So since I was very young, I developed an interest in disarmament. I remember preparing entire weekends of I don't know, debating positions and or position papers for the Model United Nations, specifically of topics relating to global security and of course disarming aspects. So since that moment, I developed a great passion for these topics, and I moved forward with all of this. Did my best to assure a prosperous resolution or agreement with all of those aspects. But the thing was that I could be like in an event, a debating event for 3 days. I will be so passionate about it, maybe even win like an award. But the thing was that those words remain there, like those good intentions of changing the world and finding a solution for disarmament related topics didn't generate any type of actions. And the point is that from college onwards, I decided that I wanted to create something or get involved into efforts that not only had like this fair and just missions, but I wanted to generate some visible impact over the world, which of course had a positive nature. So I started working with some initiatives of the UN regarding sustainable development, SDGs, of course, and other issues that were going toward that direction. But COVID hit. I wasn't able to do anything in person, so I had to, do some other events for the UN online and stuff. And with that thinking, I arrived to the call of Youth for Disarmament, which was explained beautifully by Julian. I applied and I got in. For me, it was great because I was joining this new efforts, but also this interest over disarmament that really was into me, and I wanted to do something about it. So we had several workshops, we had several aspects, but one topic specifically caught my eye ever since they shared the first resources about it, and that was the relationship between global armies and environment. And I saw a big issue relating to the magnanimity that Alexandra was explaining, like the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that they produce, but also of the money that we pour into those type of systems, which of course, I don't think generate global impacts for good. In that sense, the guide is a representation of that past, of that experience, where I'm trying to, I spent entire weekends researching information for this, but make the information concise for people to understand it easily and to, see the problem, the issue, but not only understand it, but also enact it and have concrete solutions that you can enact, you as a individual can enact in your community, in your locality, to address this issue from your perspective. Saying that, the guide follows those principles. It tries to be concise. It tries to be inclusive, as we have an edition in Spanish and English. You can see that as well in the website. But the thing is that the guide not only seeks to inform and to give very important inputs about these issues, but also to give you concrete solutions and actions to put this into it. In that sense, I would like to now go into the specifics of the guide, and I would like to explain you page by page about it, and of course, explain a bit of what it represents. So now I will share my screen. Just give me a second. Okay. Do you see? Yes. Okay. Do you see my screen? Awesome. So as you can see, this is the cover page. As Juliana was saying, this art represents a lot of things. And since the first moment, what we were discussing is, hey, let's make the content of the guide very visible from the beginning. So as you can see, it is the ocean telling us, the nature, that no weapon will be able to stop the effects of rising temperatures across the world. And hence, we need to concentrate over this issue, regardless of military aspects. So this is the first page, the cover page. Then we have this. So as you may know, all of our individual efforts must be, joined to this global agenda that everyone is working about, the 2030 agenda. So this work advances SDGs 13, 16, and 17. That's the commitment, and that's the way it was also idealized. Some acknowledges, and also, so if you implement the things that you're going to see right now, please tag us on Instagram. We'll be more than happy to see them, and of course support you in the way that we can. But yeah, just a brief announce there. And then we have the first page of content, and this is the first art that the last section of the art that Yelena showed, and finally it's in the first section of content. But it's a statement. So everyone knows that young people around the world are leading the fight against climate change. But the thing is that there is one source that I believe, and many others, that we are not addressing correctly from the youth side and from other sections of the issue, right? So with that in mind, we go to the first topic. And as you can see, the tank that Juliana drew is here in the center to represent what we are talking about in this section. Of course, I will not go about the content of each of the sentences, but just you to know that we try to answer two questions here. First, what is the amount of the greenhouse gas emissions of global militaries, and then why are they so polluting in the first step? So as you can see, we have statistics, we have data that will help you with, of course, references that you can see in the last pages. But it is only for you to know very concisely what's the issue, what is happening nowadays, for you to understand it very easily. Then we have the section of military budget. This is also a very important section of the guide, as we try to answer again, how much money do we spend annually in climate, in military aspects. So here you have a very important figure in the third sentence. And we also answer how much money do we need to enact climate-related solutions that will save our planet from the effects of climate change. So again, this section of the guide tries to be very concise over how much money are we spending in militaries and how much do we need to spend in climate-related aspects stuff. So again, if you read it with a lot of emphasis, you will see it. Also, we make a very important point about nuclear weapons, which of course ask a lot of money to be maintained. And weapons that will wipe the existence of the humanity need to be removed. So again, just a very important point there. Then we go towards the action part. So here, as you can see, we have three main fields for action: for young activists, which is in the center; for young students, which is also a very important particularity of our age, our segment; and then for youth in general. You have three actions for each section that are very concise and pretty actionable if you check them. So regardless of your context, you will find something that you can do. And of course, if you find something that you believe is more effective to implement in your community, please go for it. All of these actions to generate a new conceptualization of disarmament, regarding one oriented towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions while recognizing the inherent necessity of militaries. So that is, let's make greener the militaries, as everything in our society is trying to generate to save us from this climate change catastrophe. To end, well, we have the references that you can check if you want to learn more, and of course, check where do we got everything. And of course, the credits, and that's it. So again, you have the link, you have the landing site. Please feel free to share it in your networks. This guide is to share, this guide is to reach young people to enact it, and not only be only one PDF that it's there and no one reads and stuff. So this is yours. I will say that today, you 40 individuals that took your time to be here and to listen us, you are part of the solution, because you're listening one big issue, and now you have a tool, a mechanism to generate change with your initiatives and address the military carbon footprint. So the fight starts with you, with me, and with everyone that you impact with these initiatives. I'm more than happy to share with you and with you all this effort that took a lot of time, several months. But thank you again, and I give the floor back to Ms. Jacob.
Thank you very much, Sam. And I think listening to you all is really inspiring, especially for the youth. We will now have a brief session of a Q&A. So first, if you have questions, please write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you have any question. We have exactly 15 minutes, so please feel free to take advantage of our guest speakers.
Perhaps just a tiny clarification. You can find the Spanish edition of the guide also in the website. You just click on the Spanish flag, and you will have a Spanish landing site, and you will be able to download it there. But yeah.
Will we find some questions? Maybe, Ms. Gabriel, would you mind maybe sharing with us a little bit of what you shared in the chat concerning a working group on climate, peace, and security?
There we go. Hi. Yes, so this was a labor of love that has come over the past couple months within the Youngo system. And what we've done is we realized there wasn't really a dedicated group for formal advocacy within the Youngo and in UNFCCC framework within the constituency. So we wanted to create a platform that sort of could take these kind of growing fields and allow youth to have a collective voice. We actually developed a proposal, which I'll share a link in a minute if you want to read it and join for a brief of what the group will be. We just launched this week. It's only been 2 days, but we've got about 250 people already who are very keen. So we already had also an expression of interest with the project on nuclear disarmament. There was a smaller group on nuclear disarmament within the Youngo system historically, and they've joined with us. So now we're going to have a joint group that will approach these issues from both the security and a peace building side. So not just one angle, but both at the same time. And a lot of that will look at instabilities caused by climate issues, but also youth-led climate initiatives and climate initiatives in general as a position of track to diplomacy or positive peace building. So both sides of things shared. I'll share it separately also in the chat, as well as the proposal link if you want to take a closer look. But thank you for letting me share that. Also, Santiago.
First, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please, Felipe. I think we have some technical issues, but no worries.
Hello, do you hear me now? Okay, well, first of all, congratulations, Santiago. I found your guide quite interesting. And I would like to ask you, what are your next steps towards probably making this guide more accessible for a lot of youth people that not necessarily are involved in the disarmament movement, or even in the movement of climate change advocacy, but like just common people, common students, like your classmates that you've seen in school or stuff like that? Like, what is your advice on that, and how do you recommend to share this guide with them?
Thank you so much, Felipe, for your question. Yeah, sure. So right now, next steps is we have the guide, we have the contents, and now through partnerships that I'm currently building with other youth organizations and initiatives. The issue right now is to, well, use their networks and use these synergies to reach more and more people. As I said, like the guide is made in a way where it's very easy to understand the contents. So we believe that and this is like another step, very important, by making like some sections of the guide into videos where young people are talking and making some points. We'll be able to reach a wider audience that perhaps is not that interested in even reading the guide. But the thing is that yeah, through these partnerships and making the guide into smaller videos with young people talking about it is going to be awesome. And of course, yeah, just sharing them and moving together is going to be, I believe, a good way to reach a good consensus, no? for your response. Yeah, I don't know if I did great.
Thank you very much. Now, please, Omar, you have the floor. Yes, Omar Reyes. Yeah, you may speak.
Yeah, sorry, couldn't activate my mic, but thank you, Jaco. Oh, first of all, as well, congratulations, Santiago and your team, an amazing artwork, and congratulations. Seriously, I liked it a lot, and I would like to ask you. It's a combination between a question and a commentary for me. Can these same initiatives or these same ideas in the terms of sustainability, do you have, or have you planned on addressing them in the space sector? Because I mean, the space activities may concern different things, even military use, as you have known and experienced, but more on the emissions, because on the last year, 2022, we recorded a record for space launches, which was around 180 successful rocket launches, which involves a massive amount of emissions. So have you think or have an idea of how this can evolution into perhaps another guide to address sustainability, and as well the disarmament on the space activities, perhaps collaborating with the COPUS or the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space? Thank you.
Thank you, More. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Actually, right now I don't have plans to do it like a space related guide, but I think that the guide it's general in a way that it comprises like all military activities. So as this evolves and perhaps we will see something into space in the future, I think that the contents of the guide are general enough to impact that kind of efforts. So yeah, for sure, I think we can do that, and I think it's a great idea to also perhaps later focus another version where we tackle specific space-related aspects of climate change or sustainability, as we were saying. But yeah, I don't know if I responded your question correctly.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I think it's pretty general, as you say. I liked it a lot. I will share it for sure. But I was trying to get another initiative perhaps for a further project.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Amazing work.
Thank you, Mar.
So I'm seeing some questions in the chat, and perhaps you could address them before we proceed. The first is, what was the biggest challenge you encountered in the process of the creation of the guide? The second is, what is the broad objective? Where would you like this guide to reach? And sorry, there are a lot of questions, but I think they can be aligned. How do you envision the use of this guide among the youth?
So in interest of time, I will try to be very brief because we have, like got to the point of ending this event. But so about the main objective is that I would like to see youth activism and youth advocacy tackling this issue and addressing it through the existing networks that exist nowadays. That's like the main objective, and of course, with that, generate change and seeing a narrative where militaries are taking into consideration climate-related issues like their greenhouse gas footprint for everything. So I think that's one of the main objectives of the guide, and of course, the guide is meant for youth, so that's like one of the most important aspects. The second question, I think, is it possible to purchase the guide in physical form or in a sell point? No, it is only virtual, so you can download it for free in the website. How do you envision the use of this guide among youth? Well, I think it is a resource for people to share the actions and create synergies between them. So I would like to see young people reading it and idealizing how they can put into action these efforts into their own initiatives or their own contexts. Either if you are only a student and you want to do a homework, like that's one of the proposals, just do a homework about this and share the results. So again, it's like very grassroots and tackling the issue locally. But yeah, that's the way I'm seeing this. And I see the last question. As a young person, part of the team from the Agency for Provision, we are very interested in showing our support ability. Oh, thank you so much. But yeah, I think I responded to all of the questions.
Yes, I think so. I think we have time for just one more question before we just move towards the end of this event. I'm so sorry. I think I would mispronounce your name, so please go ahead and you may introduce yourself.
Are you listening to me? Okay, I have this question. I wanted first of all to congratulate you for the great work. It's well done, simple, and I really believe that education is that tool that will really help in this struggle for disarmament. So my question is this: you know that the question of disarmament is very sensitive. I want to know if you had any connection with politicians, and I want to know what was their perception of your project. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. So right now, there was no intervention of any governmental actor into the creation of the guide. So to be honest, right now it was generated between youth stakeholders and the international field. So yeah, I will tell you what they think when this happens, but I think I don't have a further response for this right now. But thank you for your question.
Well, thank you very much to you all. And just to close this event, Mr. Santiago Yerawan will provide us with some closing remarks. And then, yes, thank you very much. You can take the floor.
thank you so much, Jaco. So yeah, just to end this, thanks so much everyone for joining. You can find the guide there, and I will send again a follow-up email with the guide. Yeah, thanks so much for joining. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that we can continue to generate impact towards this issue. Thank you so much. Bye.